Hello there to my live YouTube people, and I am going to start. I'm going to start the episode. That's the big plan. Big plan. Hello and welcome. I am your host, Hollis. This is the podcast I Do What I Want, and it's all about writing and my personal writing journey and basically what I have going on. So I hope you like that. I also like to try to talk to guests and things like that whenever I can convince one to, you know, come on the podcast. It's more of an adult scheduling problem than a convincing problem. Let's just be honest. But we're going to get there. We're going to get there. I'm hoping for my next episode on March 26th, Sunday, March 26th, I will be able to have a friend come on. We're trying to work out life scheduling kinks now. Um, Also, I know this is Monday. I usually go live on Sunday, but if you saw my little short or reel on Instagram, I had a migraine all day yesterday and I could not record and I felt bad. So I still have a headache today, but I don't feel like vomiting and I can focus. So yay! It's time to record the podcast. A couple of quick announcements before we get into the main brunt of it. By the way, the topic is The Queen Witch, the sequel to Save a World, book 2 in the Rashan series that is coming out in April in like a month. It's like, oh my God. But anyway, that's going to be our subject matter this time. There are no major spoilers in this episode, just for those of you who are concerned. I will be talking about the character evolution a little bit, about the characters that survived the first book who are in this book and how they have evolved in this book. And I also will talk about the villains or antagonist or antagonists, whatever, in the book, and the world itself. But I'm not going to give away like the plot, the storyline, the drama. I'm not going to do that to you. But if you are one of those people who are like, I do not want to know anything about this book before I read it, then maybe this isn't the right episode for you. But I promise I'm not going to spoil the book for you. I am going to talk about it, but I'm not going to spoil it. I will be very courteous, I promise. So the announcements, of course, the Queen Witch is coming, and the trailer is live on my YouTube and it's pinned on my Instagram. So if you want to watch the book trailer, see what you think. Which the book trailer has, you know, on par with spoiler level in this episode. Please go watch it. I hope you enjoy. I made it myself. I'm trying to get better at video editing, so also be kind. And then the other thing is, and I think I mentioned it in my last podcast, that the writers' workshop went wonderfully. I was very, very excited. Collaborated with the Carnegie writers, and I have had the opportunity to meet with Carnegie writers, the founder, and everything since then. And we have decided that I will continue to do workshops with them, and that will happen once a quarter. So the next workshop will be in June, and it will be through Carnegie Writers. I'll post it all over my socials and things. So if you want to join, you will definitely have no trouble finding the link if you follow me. But you can also sign up via the Carnegie Writers website, which will be really cool. It's not posted yet, and we are actually kind of like trying to I have an idea for a topic, but we're seeing if there's popular demand for the next topic of the writers workshop before announcing it. If not, I definitely have something that I would suggest or that I would like to do. The other thing is that I am republishing, doing a second edition of the first book in the Rashan series, To Save a World. It will have a cover that matches, like looks really great with the Queen Witch cover, and it will be coming out in June as well. So That's exciting. And then another thing that's happening in June is that the podcast episode of Drinking with Authors, if you can find them on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, they're great. You get online with them. Everybody has whatever alcohol they like to drink. And we just talk about books and writing and get silly. And it's a really fun podcast. I had so much fun chatting with them. It's really fun to listen to as well. Plus, you learn a lot about the writing world. That is also going to be released sometime in June. We don't have an exact date yet, but that it's already recorded, and that's when that's going to come out. So June, my birthday month, will have a lot of personal presents for me. And then also, oh yeah, quick announcement that I am working on the next book in what I am calling the Chronicles of the Lost Beacon, of which Spare the Swallow, my historical fantasy novel, is the origin story. And then the first book in that series called Ignite, which I'm entitling Ignited, like a flame ignited, is going to come out in 2024. I'm still writing it. I do not have a direct release date for you yet. I am aiming for early 2024. So, woo! Anyway, that's all that. Let's talk about The Queen Witch. So, The Queen Witch is based in Rashan. It is book 2 of the Rashan series, which I am very excited about. As I've mentioned a billion times, when I initially wrote To Save a World, I wasn't actually thinking, I was thinking it'd just be a one-off. But due to reader demand, I wrote a second book, and as I was writing the second book, I just thought, I want it to be a series. I realized this world had so many books in me. I had so many books in me for these characters and for this world. And I really frankly, the Queen Witch is the book that so far I have enjoyed writing the most, which is a lovely feeling. And I really yeah, I've just enjoyed writing it so much, and I believe it shows. My beta readers certainly think it shows. Yay. And that is wonderful. So it is book 2 in the Rashan series. I have already outlined book 3. I have not started writing it yet. But book 3 in the Rashan series, I am hoping I will also be able to have released in late 2024. If I can keep everything together and keep myself on track. But we're talking about The Queen Witch. So the publication status of The Queen Witch, it is coming in April. I am shooting for around April 15th or 20th. I am very excited. As many of you may know from previous podcast episodes, I do a lot of my own design work. Spare the Swallow, I had my friend Dio Jensen do the cover and page layout, and I was so happy with what Dio did. It was absolutely what I wanted. It was perfect. She's so easy to work with. She's a personal friend as well, but I knew that creatively she and I would just click, and we did, and yay. But in the interest of saving money, frankly, and that I do know how to do this myself. And for the Rashan series, I have a very clear visual direction with that. With Spare the Swallow, I had the right idea, I had the right feeling, but I was having a difficulty putting my thoughts and feelings for that book into the visual world. Which as a designer, many if you're artistic and you transfer things visually, you will understand that disconnect that exists sometimes between the words and emotions in your brain and the inability to actually put it down visually in a medium. And for the Rashan series, I don't have that disconnect. With Spare the Swallow, I knew I needed someone else, and I knew that Dio was that designer who would do it what I was feeling, and she just blew it out of the water. It was more than I could have asked for, so hooray. And she is available. Diojensen.com. Just saying. Um, and she's, freelance graphic designer. She's wonderful. And she doesn't just do book cover. I mean, she doing a book cover and a page layout was out of her norm. She does a lot of branding work and things like that, and magazine work, which is stellar. But yes, I'm sure she'd be happy to work on another book cover or page layout if you're an author. She really did a fabulous job. Um, the Queen Witch, I had a very clear artistic direction that I wanted, and especially since To Save a World, I knew how I wanted to change. I did do the design of the original cover of To Save a World with some help from my other designer friend Angie, um who helped me. Like, I knew what I wanted and I was putting it together, but I lacked some of the technical know-how to make a shape in the design software that I was using, and so Angie basically helped me make shapes that were in my brain. And that was very, very nice. So so that happened, but the cover of that, which is what I wanted when it was originally published in 2017, is no longer my vision, especially because it was originally published as a one-off book, and the vision for To Save a World as the first book in a series is a little different, and I'm really happy with the cover design for To Save a World that I have come up with, which I'll be releasing that cover reveal, after the release of The Queen Witch, and I'm actually going to create a book trailer for it as well, so yay! But The Queen Witch got the cover design is completely finalized. I did the cover reveal a couple weeks ago. Again, you can see it on my Instagram or on my YouTube shorts. And then I also just finished the page layout. Woo, which if as a designer, if you have ever had to do a page layout, especially for a full length novel, when you're doing a page layout for like a little like 3-page like brochure or something, is very different than doing a page layout for a 400-page novel. Is really different, and it's much more time consuming. It's not terribly difficult, but because it's 400 pages, takes a really long time. So I am over the moon that I finished the page layout for that. It took hours, and it also took me a learning curve because it was the first time I had done a complete page layout by myself, and I was doing so in a new software. So it probably took me a little over 10 hours when all was said and done to do the page layout. But next time it will be less than 10 hours because I won't be making some of the double efforts that I accidentally made with that. But I'm really, really excited. Everything is getting buttoned up. Everything is ready to go. I just need to, the ISBN numbers are purchased. It will be released in both paperback and ebook, and it will be available wherever, Barnes and Noble. It should, I'm going to get it on the shelves in Barnes and Noble, not every store, but I will definitely have it in a few stores, and hopefully the big one in New York, the big like corporate headquarters books, Barnes and Noble in New York. I actually have a friend who works there who is another author. Her name is Sarah Aaron. She has a wonderful poetry book called Behind Her City Eyes, which is about the whole book is about her first love. And I strongly recommend it. I actually designed the cover for that book as well, uh, and it's wonderful, but Sarah Aaron actually works at that Barnes& and Noble, so, yeah, I got people. And and then obviously that's kind of from the publishing end. At this point, it is final checks and just making sure it is all perfect, and then I'll pull the trigger, and that'll be great. Other than that, so what is The Queen Witch about? Very, very briefly, it's the second book in the series. We will open up 20 years after To Save a World has ended. So, To Save a World, keep in mind, the main characters are pretty much all elves. You have like there's the demon in there and who lives about the same amount of time as an elf does, which is about 800 years. So, keeping in mind 20 years is more like 2.5 years to an elf as far as passage of time is concerned, maybe 2 to 4 years, uh, for them, for than it would be for a human. The amount that they've aged, all that sort of thing. It's less than it's a very short it's less than 5 years in the eyes of the characters, and how their lives develop and everything. Because when you live to be 800 years old, and that's just normal for your people as elves, you know, 20 years is a blip. So it opens 20 years later. Darian and Ethne, who they got married at the end of the first book, they um they have a little daughter now who, again, they're elves, so in actual years she's 11 or 12 years old. She's that makes her roughly 4 or 5 it developmentally, if you were to compare it to the developmental cycle of a human child. She's just barely out of being a toddler. So she's very young, she's very innocent. And Yoselin and Aram live like next door. The wizard Tim is there with his mansion. Jeeve is teaching at the mansion. Everything has been very idyllic, hunky dory, happy, happy. And they are living this great life in the city of Duomo, just living their lives, being left alone. Hooray, isn't that fun? And Tim has been, since the world was reborn and magic came back and all of that, they've been teaching the apprentices all of that. What really happens evolutionally, okay, I can't speak. Anyway, as far as the evolution of the characters is concerned, we see a different side. We get to see more mature sides of everyone, of course, because even though to them it's only like in their minds, like it's 20 years later, but they've grown. They grew a lot in the first book. That was a very much a coming of age for the four main characters. They really moved in, but in this it moved into who they were as people. But in this book, they they already knew they figured out who they all were. They got it together, and now we see them in the next stage of life. That stage where most of us are settled down, like it's they found their niches, they found their little tribe and their chosen family and all of that, and now they've settled. They're on the path that they want to be on. They're doing all the domestic things that of course Yoselin and Aram do not have children, which again, I that's something that's mentioned. That they don't want kids. Yoselin and Aram do not want children at the end. Even not even at the end, but at the during the first book. And Ethne and Darian do. So and everybody's happy, happy, happy with their own choices and all of that. And so Ethne and Darian do have a daughter, and we see that. And Tim has grown too. We see and Jeeve has grown. So Ethne and Darian we're seeing them as parents now. They're more mature, more patient, and a little softer in a lot of ways. In the first, they still, Ethne still has her little temper, but it doesn't come out as often. Darian still can get that steely, stoic, like hard gaze where he's a little intimidating sometimes, but again, it's much less often. Being parents has softened both of them in a good way and made them both more patient, and also made them and we see them as more just like more responsible adults. it's it is what it is. They're responsible for a human life, and they have a house and a home that they built and maintain, and they have to do all these things. So yes, they're more mature. They've grown. and their priorities have shifted. In the first book, of course, they were very concerned with, their how their culture viewed them, how their tribe, the Irani tribe, viewed them, how, am I pleasing my parents, all these things, but which they still care about their people and their parents, and living the life that they wanna live, but they already found their way to the life that they want. They're liberated, they're doing things their way, they're happy, and again, now they have another, not only do they have a child, but they're married, they're taking care of each other. It's not a individual self-discovery anymore. It is a, "I know who I am, but now I also need to be, in collaboration with these other people that I have, one of them I made, and this other person who I spending the rest of my life with by choice, because I love them." And so when you're married, you have to make those compromises, and you have to learn to live with that other person. Being married myself, I I love being married, but it is something where you can't, it's not, in many cases, you keep your own identity, but in many cases, it's no longer an I, it's a we. And in Darien and Ethne and Aram and Yoselin, because they also, live together. They didn't officially get married, but they have matured as well, and they have also come to that journey of, okay, yeah, you're in love and, relationship, but they have come to that place where they are they are operating as a unit. And yes, they still have their individual identities, but they are also, then there's this other entity in a way that is them as a we. And it's almost, honestly, it's a triangle, oh, the, like, engineering shape coup de grace, right? That the pyramid, all of that, it's a very sturdy, balanced shape. There's a reason it's everywhere. And the triangle is, when you have your two, you have the spouse or partner, whatever the relationship, and then you also have, boop, the we, and it's all a balanced piece. And that's something that the characters have achieved at this point. Their relationship is there, and I really enjoy that about Ethne and Darien and Yoselin and Aram. And of course, they're all still best friends because of course they are. And then with Jeeve, who is a professor and basically the wizard Tim's protege, he has really come into his own, because he is a professor now. And before, in the first book, he was this nomadic kind of guy, I mean, still extremely, outgoing and friendly and caring and, charismatic, extremely charismatic guy. But he never he never really settled anywhere in the he liked to travel and hop around, and just live his life on the road, essentially. But then he's hasn't gone anywhere for 20 years. He has settled. He has found the place that he now calls home, and he didn't even realize that he was looking for it. And so we see Jeeve, as a professor, because and that's he is Professor Jeeve, to the apprentices at the mansion, and the school that is also slash wizard's mansion. And he has matured a lot as well, because he also, even though he doesn't have a romantic partner, which he does find in the Queen Witch. Of course, I have a little romantic subplot. I can't help myself. There's always a romantic subplot, and I won't tell you who or how or whatever. But yeah, Jeeve gets a somebody, which I'm excited about. So he but he hasn't found his romantic somebody, but at this point he has found his, professional, or his calling in life, if you will. um he always knew it was magic. Obviously, he was a magic user in the first book, but he loves teaching. And I love how he has evolved, and I even gave him a beard, which just is very professorly to me, and that is something that I really appreciate about, the evolution of the characters. There are some new characters that I introduce. One of them is Jeeves, future partner, who you will learn about, who I love, but I'm not going to say anything about them because I just want that to be a surprise for the readers. It is based they are the person that he falls in love with, though, is based on a relative of mine. And, while their full name is different, their nickname that they like to be called is the same, which brings me joy. So, um, yes, I think that's very fun. And the, other new character, is a wizard's apprentice. Or well, she becomes a full-blown wizard. She gets thrown into that world very quickly. She was at graduation point anyway, and her name is Tania, and I love Tania because she's so smart and she's very brave and she really cares. Uh, but she's also very down to earth and she's a human. I'm throwing human in the mix. Uh, and she is very, very young. So, that is something I enjoy because even though we have all of these characters who in the first book went through that journey, I wanted to have a character 'cause in the second book, all of the characters you knew from before, they've moved on to the next stage. They've matured, they're growing, they're still growing and evolving, but they are no longer in that stage of self-discovery, and I really enjoy writing that stage, that journey of coming into your own, which happens for us humans around the age, between like 18 to 24 or 25, like it's different for everybody, but college years a lot of the time is what your early 20s is when you really start to form your identity as a whole person and what will be your adult identity and that of course can still change over the years and it does for many many people but that's when you really start to come into your own and you really start to make that transition from being a child or like depending on your parents and all that to being like a full-fledged adult paying rent doing all those things that in the modern world anyway but Tania is I think I make her 22. She might be 21. She is 21 or 22. She's very young, but she has a really good head on her shoulders. And I really enjoyed writing her because she does get tossed, not tossed. She agrees to go. They ask her, and she says, I'll go. I won't tell you the circumstances, but she does end up going on the journey with the characters to resolve the conflict. Um, so that's they need her. Jeeve needs to stay behind. He as a magic user. They needed a magic user, and due to circumstances, Jeeve is staying behind, and Tania is asked to go, and she has basically freshly graduated from the wizarding school. She's the top student, and that is why they said, okay, well, we need a magic user. We need someone we can trust. And Tim and Jeeve are like, this girl has got it. She is great. She's completely untested in the real world, but we know we can trust her. And we know that she is going to pull through even if she doesn't know it yet. And that is something I really, really enjoy about Tania is you get to see a lot of her internal dialogue or read a lot of her internal dialogue where she is thinking, "Oh my god, like, this is so crazy. I never had to sleep outside before. I never had to do all these things and can I do this? Can I do this?" And, and, "Oh my god, I just saved the life of one of my comrades, and I didn't realize I had that in me. I didn't realize I had all of this in me." And you really get to read about her personal development alongside the other characters who are evolving further into their next stages as well, and how Tania is looking at the other characters from her own younger perspective and seeing how it relates to her own journey and how they can learn from each other. And I really enjoyed writing that dynamic a lot. And I really, really am excited to put Tanya in future books because she was a very fun character to write. She's a very strong character, and I love a strong female lead. I do. So and she adds, because Jocelyn and Ethne are very strong women as well, but they are also both very different in personality. And Tanya, because there's so many different ways to be strong. And Aram and Darian are also extremely strong male characters. And that's something else I enjoy is that the men and the women are all equally strong, I feel. And they all allow each other to be themselves and show their own strength and work together as opposed to put each other down. And I love that. I love that everyone has the ebb and flow, and you can appreciate that. All right, this isn't my strength. This is their strength. They're doing this part, but I'm going to do this part because I'm better at that. And that is something very balanced. I enjoy a lot of balance in my work, and just keeping the team alive, keeping it companions and celebrating that we are all strong and not necessarily in the same way. And because we have different strengths, that makes us even stronger as a unit. So that's something I really enjoy perpetuating in my writing. And I further perpetuated it in the Queen Witch, I feel. And so that is how the characters are developing. The other thing I'm really excited about in the Queen Witch is the world of Rashawn, of course, was reborn and magic came back. Because in the first book, the gods had the heavenly wars and they killed each other off and blah blah blah. The world was dying, and magic was slowly dying too, because magic is divine, and there was still some magic left, but it was also dwindling when everything was reborn and you had new gods and things like that. Then all of a sudden all of this magic came flowing back. And that's why Tim had more apprentices to teach and all these other things. But with the rebirth of magic as a spell casty situation, we also had the reemergence of magical creatures. The world of Rashan, of course, is a fantasy world. It's a classical fantasy world. You have unicorns and griffins and leviathans and blah blah blah. You have all of the fun fantasy creatures, and among them, and the Queen Witch is focused a lot on fairies. Now, fairies, the way that I write them, are not at all like the fairies that spring into most people's minds, even my mind, when you first think of it. They are not little humans, like they're not tiny human human looking creatures with wings or anything like that. They are sentient plants. And they do have like some humanoid features, not like when they can speak and open their eyes, and they have mouths and things like that. But if they sit back, and if you have a tree fairy, for example, and the tree fairy just closes its eyes and has its mouth closed and stands still, you're just walking by a tree. And this is how they blend so well into the landscape. Even in the fantasy world of Rashan, fairies at the very beginning of the book, they're talking about it, that, Darian and Ethne's daughter Beatrice is like talking about how she talks to fairies, and the parents are like, that's adorable. What an imagination. Ha ha. But because they don't even know that fairies are real. very much like in our world, a lot of people like to believe in fairies, and that's great. And there are a lot of people who say that's nonsense. It's fanciful and fun, but fairies are not real. And you believe whatever you want to believe. But Rashawn is very much the same way, except in the world of Rashawn, I'm going to tell you right now, fairies are real there. And the people of Rashawn don't necessarily know it because they hide so well because all they have to do is be still. And everyone will just go, "Well, that's a dandelion," and they'll keep walking. It's very easy to hide, and fairies in Rashan don't really wanna have anything to do with the matters of the elves and the humans and the demons and everybody else. They don't care about what's going on with them, not in general. Uh, there is the Queen Witch is the name of a fairy who is getting a little out of hand and is the main antagonist in the story. She's the problem. And the Queen Witch is a sycamore fairy. So all the fairies in my book, I'm really excited about it because they're all like basically you will in the book I do describe them a lot visually, but I also describe them as a marigold fairy or clover or berry bush, but they or a fern fairy, that sort of thing, because that's exactly what they look like. It's they the and they're the same size as whatever plant they resemble. And the only difference is that and some of them can fly. For example, the tree fairies cannot fly. They don't have wings. And they're so tall, they don't need to because they're trees. And you of course, you have different sizes. You have than ficus trees, you have, the sycamore trees, which are very, very tall, which is what the queen witch is. And, she is fairies don't necessarily have gender, but for the sake of just making it easier to write things, and she does call herself a queen. I it's a she. So she is a sycamore fairy who is gaining a lot of power, and in general, the larger fairies have a little bit more strength and therefore more power in fairy society. But fairies also don't really care to interact so much with each other, which we learn as well. There's not a lot of camaraderie in the fairy culture. They are very much a keep to themselves situation, but I really, really enjoy that they are just plants. They're just sentient plants. And for example, if you cut them, with a sword or whatever, they don't bleed blood. They will drip sap. Or that if you break like a little benficus leaf, you get that milky white sappy stuff. I don't know what that one is called, but I looked up the plant that the fairy was impersonating, and I said that they gave off whatever whatever it was if they got injured. Uh, and if you cut a fairy in half, they're still alive, and both parts will be wiggling, and they will be now severely handicapped in how they can move, depending on where their legs or wings or whatever are. But that's not you can't just stab and kill. With you as they're definitely organic mortal creatures. Um, but I had a really fun time creating my own version of fairies, and I hope that you will enjoy them too because I feel it's a fresh take. I have never read anything that has fairies in this particular context before. And there are some things that are kind of similar, but it's really for me, it's different from anything that I've ever read. And I did take, a lot just from my own idea of if plants were sentient, what would they do? And frankly, they really wouldn't care what we were doing. As human beings in particular, we tend to frankly be a little arrogant, I feel, and I'm guilty of it too. I'm a human, of just assuming that the world cares about what humanity is up to. And I don't think, I don't think that half the animals on I don't think that most of the animals care what human beings are up to. Do you think the white-tailed deer gives a crap what we're doing? As they only care when we're imposing on their space. Other than that, it's they've got their own deer stuff to worry about. They do that. So plants really wouldn't care what everyone else is doing. It is only that they have a use for Darian and Ethne's child as a sort of channeling conduit for energy, that that there is any involvement at all, and that is, of course, the one of the main problems in the story is that their dear, very young daughter is in danger, and that is something that is one of the high stakes. So they and again, I'm not gonna say anything else, but we have a whole new take on fairies. We have some new characters. Your characters you already hopefully fell in love with in the first book have evolved. We also learn a lot about the wizard Tim. In the first book, he is very much just a kooky wizard. But in this book, you actually learn about his backstory. You learn about his life before he became so powerful. You learn who Tim the wizard is as a human, as a person, because he was born human. His life has been extended because he's so powerful that like the magic infused in his bones, and he's almost 1,000 years old. But he's still a human being. He's just a really magical human being. And so you learn about how his life was 1,000 years ago, and who he really is, and his who his family was, and you find out like he is from a human culture that doesn't even exist anymore. Nobody speaks his native language anymore. It's a lost culture, and it's a little sad, but there are a lot of, if you think about our own history, there are a lot of cultures that we don't know the language from 1,000 years ago is completely gone. Completely gone except for maybe some scraps of knowledge. But there are many little microcultures that like we that existed, I'm sure, and we have no idea that they were ever there. And thousands upon thousands of different languages that were spoken that we will never know about because the people don't exist anymore, and no one can hear it, and maybe their traditions were all oral. So who knows? But Tim is of a culture it doesn't exist anymore, which is why if you've read the first book, his name is like crazy long and weird, and that's part of the very long-winded culture, as he says. So his that's why his name's so crazy, and I really enjoyed writing the full character development about the wizard Tim, and there is an episode about the wizard Tim character development a few episodes back. I want to say like number 15 or something. I don't know, but yeah, you can it's in the title. Like tell you it's the character development for him. So if you're curious to learn more about him, but I'm really excited about the Queen, which I got to delve deeper into the characters, and I got to delve deeper into the world. And on top of all that, I got to basically create more opportunities within Rashawn. I was so inspired while writing and then editing the Queen Witch that I have already written the outline for and I'm very much like or I guess the planster. Like I do a lot of pantsing. I write by the seat of my pants, but I do have like a very high like napkin long outline for every book that I do where I have my milestones. Like they have to they have to get on a boat. They have to do, like whatever it is, like this is my antagonist, this is my protagonist, blah 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 blah. Blah. I have like a very very high outline for every book I write because um it does help to keep me from losing the plot quite literally. It's, British slang for going mad as well, but, that's when a book goes crazy and you lose the plot. So I always out do have at least a very high, like, just like a 5 bullet points of, "Don't forget these things," so that I don't lose the plot and I don't because when a writer loses the plot, you're gonna stop reading it. I know I've stopped reading books that, I've gone, "Well, they completely negated like, what is the whole point of this book now?" They've gone down rabbit holes, and I don't even know what I'm reading. Kind of similar to the television series Lost from the early 2000s that some of you might remember, maybe many of you. But anyway, I feel that I did watch the whole series, but I feel they lost the plot. It went really it went in some weird directions that were interesting, but how and why did that all make sense? It didn't anyway. Maybe I don't know. Don't come after me if you're a huge fan of the show and you have I'm sure if it makes sense to you, congratulations, that's awesome. I did not delve super deep into it. I was not so invested, just FYI. So maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's how I felt about it. So I'm really looking forward to the next books in the series. I'm looking forward to involving more creatures because like I said with more magic being back in the world, it's also a new kind of magic in the world. And that enables all sorts of creatures. Um Maybe there'll be a unicorn because I do love those. Many of us do, and they're so magical and so fun, and there are so many different takes on these things. And I enjoy taking a classical fantasy character like a fairy and flipping it a bit so that it is not what you imagine it to be initially. It's not the first image that pops in your head. It's something different, or maybe the creature does not behave the way you imagine it should, which is fun for me as a writer because it's just creative and it's enjoyable to turn my own perceptions on their head and switch it around for myself as well. It's exciting, and I get very inspired by that. So, to wrap up, The Queen Witch, I don't know if my babbling has enticed you at all. I hope it has. But that is coming out in April, mid-April. Again, I've got everything really well buttoned up. I just am dotting my i's, crossing my t's, and I will have it available paperback and ebook very soon. And I'll work on getting in some bricks and mortars, definitely Barnes and Nobles. So let's keep bookstores alive, people. It's very important, and libraries too. I definitely want to do a lot of library readings and visits and things like that. That is coming very soon in June. The re-release of To Save a World that will be a little re-edited. The story is not changing at all, but there will be visually, it will be a much more beautiful book that will have the map in it, which the previous publication, I couldn't put the map in without paying all sorts of money. And anyway, there were a lot of little things that I didn't get to do in the first publication that I'm really excited to do properly this time. And actually have it properly labeled now as the first book in a series, which I will be putting the numbers on the spine of every book in the series so that you can read them in order. My goal is to have the stories stand on their own, but it helps to read them in order because there won't be cliffhangers, but it will help to read them in order because it's the introduction and the evolution of the characters. So, so yeah, I'm going to number things. I'm bringing that back because I'm tired of that not being around, and I don't know why it ever went out of fashion. It shouldn't have. And I'm also putting things on the interior page that tells you all the books in the series and other books by the author and Book club questions will be in the back of the book as well. 10 book club questions. So if you're a member of a book club, I am going to include questions. I've already done it. It's in the page layouts. In all of my books in the back, 10 book club questions so that you don't have to sit there and rack your brain and try to think of your own. All you have to do is read the book and discuss. Because I want book clubs to read my book and discuss. Pretty please and thank you. And then also Ignited, the next book technically the first book in the Chronicles of the Lost Beacon. So it will be the first book in that series. Spare the Swallow is the origin story of the Lost Beacon herself, who is Lucretia. And you will, read Spare the Swallow, the origin story. And that will be a whole series where you have that as how she got started. You could read the series separate from the origin story, but you will be more informed if you read the origin story and know where she's coming from and how and why she's so depressed and then very, very angry. I am writing the Chronicles of the Lost Beacon in actually in the stages of grief. So Ignited is the character's journey into the stage of anger. And she starts out incredibly depressed. And if you've read the origin story, you know for very good reason you would be extraordinarily depressed yourself. But this is her journey into the stage of grief that is anger. And she's going to be in the anger stage for a little while. Not the book won't be a terribly long book, but I'm really excited about it. And I'm really excited about writing the Chronicles of the Lost Beacon series, going through the stages of grief, because I'm always interested in psychological readings and mental health and that sort of thing. And I find that it helps me as a human just live my life and be healthier, but it also really helps me to better develop my characters and plot points and worlds, and using the stages of grief is actually quite inspiring because I already know how my character is feeling. I know their goal. I know what they're doing, and that is my cat meowing at me. Hi, Kit Kat. You can't see him on camera because he's on the ground, but yes. And yeah, so there's that. And then like I said, the next episode will be March 26th. I had to look at my notes. And thank you so much for listening.